Hello and welcome to the ICP podcast. I'm Élison Santos, and today I'm honored to introduce our guest, Dr. Elaine Congress, recipient of the Francis Mullen Distinguished Contribution to International Psychology Award. This award recognizes outstanding dedication and contributions to advancing psychology across international borders. Dr. Congress has dedicated her career to bridging cultural divides and promoting global mental health. So let's dive in and learn from her journey and insights. Dr. Congress, welcome.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Allison. And well, first, I want to thank ICP for nominating me for the Mullen Award. I really appreciate this, and I've tried for many years to work in terms of promoting international psychology, and I hope to tell you more about my journey today.
That's great. That's great. And I'm sure it's so well deserved. And I'm very happy to be here with you today and to help our listeners to understand and to know more about your work. Thank you very much for being here again. And well, let's go to the first question. Please let us know what originally inspired your commitments to global human rights and social justice.
I started very early. When I was a child, I grew up in a suburb, of Connecticut, all white, very middle class. But from a very early age, I remember being very concerned about slums in Hartford, Connecticut, the big city that we were next to, and people were very poor. Also, on trips south, I remember, and these were the days of segregation, and right back right after you got past south of Washington D.C., it was terrible, the segregation and what I saw, and terrible poverty with many Black families living in awful conditions. And so I was very concerned and disturbed about this, even when I was very young, when I was in grammar school. So that's continued
Right.
with this field of
Elaine,
my interest.
when are we talking about? What decade was that?
In the 60s, and we well, and I guess in the
Mhm.
the late 50s, 60s were when things began to change.
Yeah.
And I was very involved with this in terms of kind of civil rights movement and also all the other issues we were focused on in terms of sexism, in terms of women's issues,
Yeah.
also in terms of the gay issues was a big area then. And so I became so I was very involved at that time too. So I've been concerned about issues for all my life.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you say that because we know how kids and teenagers, how sensitive they are to the reality that they see, right? And maybe even more than us adults, right? And that's what you were also saying about your early life and how you felt about the things that you saw. That that's a great testimony of how it really impact our young people or young
Mm.
children, right? Yeah. But please share with us how did your early work in mental health inform your later academic and UN focused work?
Okay. Well, my first job after I got my master's in social work was working in a community mental health clinic in Brooklyn, New York, in a poor neighborhood, kind of a multicultural,
Right.
clients. And I just saw firsthand the kinds of issues and problems that they worked with. I provided mental health services, which it was just direct counseling family therapy, um,
Mhm.
kind of case management, helping them with concrete problems. But that was my kind of initial, mental health experience, which was very, very important, I think, and really, um, you
Yeah.
know, because I think it's really important that psychologists, that we all have some direct service involvement, because
Yeah.
I think in order to develop policies and programs, for people, we have to really know and understand people. So that early experience really helped me, and certainly helped me also in teaching over the years.
Yeah, so so you started as a social worker, and then somehow you go to this interdisciplinary collaboration with psychology. How did it
And let me
happen?
tell you, very interesting. Well, I was always somewhat interested in psychology. In fact, I was, a clinical social worker initially. But it really happened in this for my first job experience, because I worked on a team with psychologists. We had a team of psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers working with family. So I got to know a lot of psychologists, and I was very interested in the idea of psychological testing. So
Oh,
before I knew it, I had applied for a master's in social work. For a master's in psychology, and I kind of went through, and I have a master's plus, and I guess I was ABT, in psychology. But then the social work, they really were kind of courting me to go ahead and get my doctorate. So
oh,
so
that
anyway, so I've really been split, and I think this, like my work shows it, and I think I'll talk a little bit more about this later. But I
right.
think we're much stronger if we kind of unite. We focus a lot in terms of our separateness, but I think if we work together, we'll have a much
Yeah.
greater impact.
Yeah, and I imagine that having this social experience that as a social worker, not just as a social worker, but all the inspirations that you had from your early years, uh, it makes a lot of difference when you study psychology, just psychology later on, right? Because you have a better idea of how the social aspects impact your personal life, and you bridge these things and you understand it better, right? I
They're
mean,
very important, and that's a very important principle that we have is person and environment. And combining psychology and social work really helps that. I think in social work, we've always been very concerned about the environment, the family, the community, the larger political environment in which a person lives. But in psychology, more in terms of kind of what makes a person think and how they interact with others and all. And so naturally, I really gravitate towards social psychology, which is that field, a place where both meet. But
right.
anyway, I see psychology and social work as really kind of united, not just two separate, fields.
Definitely complementary, right? And well, let's talk a little bit more about the your involvement with at the UN. What have been the most meaningful aspects of your work representing NGOs at the UN and directing student programs?
Okay, well, first let me tell you about how I'm involved. At the
Right.
United Nations, I represent two NGOs, non-government organizations, and one is social work based. I represent the International Federation of Social Workers. We're in 146 countries. We represent professional social work organizations. So it's a
Wow, it's a
little
lot.
scary to represent about 5 million social workers around the world. But also, I represent the Institute for Multicultural Counseling and Education Services, which is psychology based. And so
Yeah.
so both of these NGOs are really compatible with my interests. Now, at the United Nations, though, I'm very kind of active in more of the kind of, I guess, daily activities. I'm involved with three NGO committees. One, the NGO Committee on the Rights of Indigenous People. Now, this may seem like really different, But, these are very vulnerable people, like around the world, including in the United States. So I've been very active on their committee. I'm the secretary. Also, there's the Committee on Migration. Needless to say, that's one of my big interests. My work on multicultural families and people, and
Right.
and the Committee on the Status of Women, because I've always been into women's issues. I had the Fordham Institute for Women and Girls, so this is another activity. So these are the NGOs that I'm active in, and I also have a group of students at the UN, and so I involve them in the work of the NGOs at the UN.
Wow. It's really amazing, right, Elaine? Because I think that for us who see and listen to what you were saying, wow, it's really impressive all the years that you have been working since your earlier years and bridging all these psychological and social perspectives and helping in the world in this global arena, right? And I want to ask you to talk about this project that you have started many years ago, which is writing books, right? So you get your very good experience with this reality where you are, and you started writing books and inviting other people to write with you. What was the vision behind your behavioral science in the global arena trilogy?
Well, as you said before, I mean, I've written writing books. In fact, I'm working on the fifth edition of my book, Multicultural Perspective to Working with Families, which
Wow.
I have contributors, psychologists and social workers to. But also, I became involved in PCUN, the Psychology Coalition of the United Nations, and we had a contract to write books. I became head of publications, so therefore I moved into writing this UN book series. And to date, we have 4 published books and 2 almost published. And I just thought this would be a way for a lot of reasons. It's a way for us to put forth our ideas, so psychologists, and social workers, but also it's a way to share with the UN, to share with students, to share with practitioners. There are 4 guiding principles for this book series. And by the way, I
Right.
should mention I also do this with Harold Takushian. We both are kind of work on publications. Number one, we try to talk about the most current pressing issues. I mean, the first one was addressing kind of the global agenda and kind of the main areas that we saw were reported, in our world. Books
Right.
2 and 3 that came out just as COVID began, when we were all hiding out in our homes. They're both on health. You can understand how that happened, right? And we look at health as a multidimensional concept. It's not just mental health or physical health, but we also have spiritual health. We have environmental health. We have all different kinds of versions of health. Our 4th book is about children, which is almost like 40% of our population, and we are
Right.
fortunate to connect with Niels Rygaard in Denmark, and has really been involved in establishing ways to work with kids in countries all over the world. So anyway, he partnered with us on this book. I knew, and I think that's when you have a chapter in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is great and a wonderful addition. We're so glad that you've been able to participate in
Well,
writing. And
well, I am very glad and I'm very honored to be part of it, and I'm very
sure.
thankful for that.
Yeah. And you will be in our next book, which will be on gender. And we decided to look at global perspectives on gender around the world. And
Yeah.
I think you wrote the chapter on South America, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So So this is a way we try to include, everyone. We're so that's a bit about our topics, but we really are interdisciplinary. I mean, we have, of course, psychologists and social workers, but we have other professions too. We have lawyers, we have UN officials, we have NGO leaders, we have clergy, um, we have doctors, medical doctors, that we gynecologists, we have an epidemiologist, we have people from different fields of practice. That's our second main point. Our third point is we really are international. We have people from 20 different countries. We have had about 160 contributors. And our
Wow.
fourth, in a way, almost most important, we've decided to include students. Too often I think students are relegated to a little footnote while the student does most of the work.
Yeah.
But then there's something like so and so worked on the literature review. So we decided to have them front and center. So we have them co-author chapters, and we also have them, edit the book. So
Right.
anyway, this is a short version of this book series.
Well, and this is really really great, and I find it really not just very important for the international community, but it's also very exciting when you have this idea and you put it in practice and you involve people from many parts of the world to give their perspective. And I think that I felt that when you invited me to contribute in these two books, last books, and I imagine that everyone who you happen to invite feel the same, feels the same because I think we have that excitement of thinking, well, I'm maybe what I do here for this book will contribute somehow for the advancement of psychology and social work, and also to policymakers mainly. How do you think? What is your perspective? How do you hope these works influence students, practitioners, and mainly policymakers?
Well, students are involved, very involved. So they read the book. They're part of the book, part of the creation. Practitioners, we hope to kind of get out the word. I mean, practitioners are working with clients in different areas in different parts of the world, and we hope that this will be informative. Policymakers, and I don't know, we also mean, I guess, people at the UN who are making our like our policies. And we hope that this information will be informative. We'll kind of give them kind of more guidance on what people are really about. A real problem, I think, with people who sometimes are involved in making policies, they don't have much understanding of people themselves. I mean,
Yeah,
they've been involved in administration so long
yeah.
that they don't. And so that's why I think our book is invaluable, because people contributed, and they kind of actual experiences, with clients, with people.
Yeah, I think that is amazing because, in the common sense, people sometimes judge the administrators, the policymakers, as if they were very specialists, very good specialists in human behavior. But as you said, well, there is just so much things to fit to be in your mind, and most of them are very they are very committed to administration. Their lives are involved with administration concepts. And we have to collaborate, right? We have to do our part as mental health professionals to help them, to provide them with these data, with this information. And I think you are doing a wonderful job with that.
We're
That's great.
trying to.
Yeah. Elaine, these last two books, Children and Gender, it's going to be published now. What are the themes that stood out most strongly for you?
Well, I became very concerned. Well, I guess always I was concerned about the different situations in which children grow up in,
Right.
and even from childhood. And so I kind of learned more about kind of the situations that children grow up with in different countries of the world. And I said, and this is important in terms of helping them. And I've learned more about ways that we do help them,
Mhm.
and which I hopefully, we showed, or we tried to show in our book with the articles or the chapters that people did. Um, and fortunately, as I said before, fortunately, we were able to get Niels Reichardt, who developed programs throughout the world in terms of working with the kids who have been, abandoned or neglected, and
Yeah.
to provide them with a positive parenting experience. So,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
that was helpful. Now, the gender book, this has been near and dear to my heart because I've always been interested in women's issues. I had the Women's Institute for Women and Girls. But we have one, but I was concerned that I knew about gender. My background, I knew about gender issues in the United States, but how much did I know, or how much did psychologists know about gender issues around the world in different
Yeah.
countries? So
Yeah.
that's why we had this idea, and we've done. And we don't have all countries of the world. We don't have the 191 countries in the UN, but we decided to talk about it in terms of different regions of the world.
Yeah.
Like kind of North America, South America, Europe, Africa, um, the
Right.
Middle East, Far East. So we have it by different regions, and I think it's just very informative.
It definitely is. Yeah. Yeah.
So, of course, one thing we have to guard against is being judgmental. Now, we look at this and, oh, we have the answer, we have the solution. Everyone should be just like us, but we have to kind of be somewhat open and receptive to listen to other people's stories, and
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Each part of the world, they develop a story there. They are there for hundreds, thousands years. Things are happening in their culture, their tradition, and I think that when we offer books as these ones that you are coordinating, we help the world to see the differences, and maybe at some time they will read it and they will try to improve their lives, right? Because they see that, well, it's
right.
possible in another part of the world, so maybe it can be possible here too.
I'm glad you mentioned that because this is very true. Thanks to the internet. I mean, this has made such a difference. People are exposed all over to, hearing about other ways of doing things, and women are exposed to this too. And it really makes a difference. I mean, it
Right,
makes a difference. And another special interest of mine is gender-based violence. We've put on several conferences on this, and I mean, it's been so helpful in terms of resources that women can go to. That I mean, having it in the internet, this availability,
right,
has
right.
been, very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, let's try to talk now about advocacy in a changing political climate like today, right? So, what do you think about what's going on in the United States, the policy changes? How does it impact the global mission of the UN and professionals like us?
well, it's very challenging. I mean, I'm really concerned about US. In aid, being cut back already. It's hurt people.
Right,
I'm concerned about what's happening in terms of law. I mean, I was an American civilization major at Brown, so I'm very involved in terms of American politics, and
yeah,
in terms of the three divisions of government, the administrative, the legislative, and the judicial. So I find it very disturbing when the judicial is at risk, shall we say, or questioned or changed. And so, so this is like a concern that, that I have. And also the policies on migration or and refugees. I
Yes.
obviously, in terms of my work and with kind of people from many different backgrounds, I find particularly upsetting because
Yeah.
I also think it's also isolation. We're all one world. No matter how much we feel we can do it ourselves here in the United States, we can't. We're just super connected in every way, even like the weather. You think, how's the weather connected? But when I read that the Sahara in Africa had these dust storms that were affecting Texas, you know, when
Yeah.
I when I look out my window and it's kind of all foggy all day long, and I think these are the wildfires in Canada. This shows the weather even shows how we can't live in isolation.
Definitely, yeah. Every aspect, right? And as you mentioned, the weather is one of the wonderful examples that shows that we are only one word, right? Yeah, that's a powerful message, and I think maybe this is one of the things that we can do, and maybe it answers part of the question. The next question that I have for you is how should psychologists, social workers, and mental health professionals in general respond to policies that challenge human rights?
Well, well, first, I think we all have to kind of work together in a lot of ways, not only in terms of our different professions. I mean, obviously, it's really important that we educate people in terms of our different profession, but in reality, even from their internship days, people work with people from other professions, and so we have to educate them more for that.
Right,
Too, and we all have to kind of join together. I mean, sometimes we get into our particular issue and
right.
we only focus on that. Not only do we have to join together our different professions, but we have to join together in kind of like almost opposition. And I believe, being, I guess, a veteran of Martin Luther King days, I really believe in kind of, peaceful, nonviolent protest
Right.
and really kind of combining with others in terms of protesting some of these changes. Also, I'm encouraged when I think this won't last forever.
Yeah,
I really am hopeful that we're going to survive. I think about the three branches of government, and in the United States, and
mhm.
I think this will, help protect us. I think if we can join together with all, our different professions and stand strong and focus on kind of, on the central issues,
Yeah.
I think we'll survive. We're going to go on.
Yeah, hopefully, yes, yes. And of course, we should have this hope and keep working as we are doing, right? And I think that these sometimes these policies and these ideas, these ideologies, like the nationalism or the focus in economy, sometimes they hide the some ideas that are more exclusionary and they don't help us and somehow it will influence it keeps influencing people's minds and maybe without noticing we are losing our ethical values and also our solidarity. I mean, how can we maintain hope and ethical clarity in our roles aimed national politics that undermine global solidarity? Well, what do you think?
Well, that's a very important point. Yeah, I've always been interested in ethics. That's another area that I've written on, and it's a very important. We have to look carefully at what we're doing and what just what is the ethical way to proceed, and when it kind of doesn't follow ethical channels. And we can't assume just because we're doing it that it's ethical. We have to think of all possible consequences.
Yeah.
Along the way, I developed an ethic model, which is a quick and easy way to look at an ethical dilemma. Because too often, I think people are so busy, working, they don't even think of the ethics involved. But it's like it's a five-step model, ETHIC. But I'll tell you, the most important I found was the I, identify who will be hurt and who will be harmed. And everything that we do, every kind of decision, we have to keep that in mind. That's the most important thing.
Right.
We can teach about ethical principles in different professions have different ethical principles. Not to mention their agencies have ethical principles, and then we have a lot of ethical kind of values being people,
Right.
but basically it boils down to that we have to identify who will be hurt and who will be harmed, and I guess that's a human rights perspective too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we need this compass, right, to make decisions, to act in the social arena in the community, right? Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. So, tell me more about the importance of culturally responsive framework, like the culturogram.
Okay, well, thank you for asking. The culturegram is, I first developed it when I worked at Lutheran, my very first job, because I worked with people from many different cultural backgrounds. And how to do this and what did I know about it? There were
Hmm.
some books about kind of cultural competence, like, if you work with Mexicans, if you work with Africans. And I just thought these are generalizations. Families are so different. In the morning, I'd see a Mexican um, family,
Yeah.
and in the afternoon, also a Mexican family, but they were very, very different. How can I get at them? So one rainy Saturday afternoon, I developed a culturegram, which is a family assessment tool. And it's basically the family's own story. And so
Right.
it's really kind of a cultural humility approach as opposed to say it's kind of cultural competence because this is their story and it differs. Each family has a different story. So
Right.
and I just think this is like an important way. These 10 aspects are very, very important in thinking about a family. One of them, when I started out, of course, I included, about legal status, and I also have a category on
Mhm.
oppression and bias and racism, and I mean these unfortunately have become even more, as we say,
Right.
important in terms of working with families.
Is it available for people who would like to know the culturogram? Where could they find it?
Okay, well, it's on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Just look at uh, there's information about I certainly be willing to share with people. I can tell I had a chapter in a book that Grant Rich and Uwe Gielan had published last year about kind of coming to America about migration, and that's probably the most up to date story about it. Um,
Yeah,
I
that's really
yeah.
nice.
I
Yeah,
also have a podcast about it.
that's great. Yeah, maybe we can put in the description of this video in the ICP channel where people can
Sure,
find it. But
I'd love to. Yeah,
right.
I'd love to share that.
Yeah, I think
So,
it's really an
so,
important
right.
too.
So,
We could do
so
that.
also, I'm taking it a step further now. It's
Right.
important to know about people's kind of cultural background, but I'm taking a more, I guess, intersectional approach. I mean, other things are important, such as gender. I also was involved in I'm sending an article, but I've done a presentation on kind of a feminist approach to the cultogram.
Right.
So yeah, we have to look at gender.
Yes.
We have to look age is important.
Hmm.
Um, we and we have to look at issues of sexual orientation. We have to let's see, what are some other we have to look at race. We have to definitely very important social economic class.
Yes.
It's very important. So these are factors that I didn't really talk about in the culture grant, but I'm working on doing something that would kind of combine everything. I don't know. This would
Yeah.
be a, I don't know,
Yeah. This is,
amazing.
well, this is definitely necessary, mostly needed, because we can talk about human dignity, but understanding it at its core, it's complex, right?
Mhm.
We have to do this work. That's the work you are doing. You have to understand each person's individuality and specificities, right? And I think that's what you are doing with the cultural grammar, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Because,
that's
yeah. And this really shows, I mean, this is a blend too of social work and psychology. I mean, it's the individual and each family is different and the individuals in the family are different.
yeah,
And we have to kind of get to know each individual in psychology of each, but also an individuals exist within families that exist within in a certain community,
yeah.
in
It's
this.
Yeah, I work mostly, my work is in clinic, right? And I see families, couples, and individuals. And I also have some research in suicidality, right? And I saw in many of my studies how when people are treated as not individuals, but as just a number in the group, they tend to lose the meaning of life, and sometimes suicide has to
Mm,
do with that feeling that, well, I'm not being treated in this world as an individual, as a person in my specific dignity. I've been treated as just one more, right? And nobody deserves that, and that's not the reason we are here, right? Each
well, that's
individual
such an
is.
important issue. And I thought of kind of a research study about if there has been an upsurge with migrants right now, given the political climate and given how anxious they must
Yeah,
be. Every
absolutely.
migrant I know is anxious, even people who have green cards,
Exactly.
uh,
This is terrible. This is really, really a serious issue, and it's affecting mental health everywhere. Yeah.
right, exactly. And
Yeah.
kids are really very, very anxious of this. Adolescents are sometimes very influenced anyway, by the
Yeah.
internet and
As you, yeah, as you said in the beginning of this interview, right, about your experience when you were a kid, when you were young, I imagine that now, even like, for example, here in the United States, even American kids are seeing this reality and feeling anxious about it, and that's not nice.
Like, have you heard about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? It started off in terms of the child welfare department, but now it's used more commonly. Basically, they talk about certain types of experiences that, the children have that really can have detrimental effects throughout their life. Things like, death of a parent or divorce or
Yeah,
extreme poverty, and certainly, and I was thinking about with kids now, migrant kids, how anxious they must be.
yeah,
If I mean, we're worried that their mother is going to be picked up by ICE and not going to come home that night.
yeah,
They themselves, they may be covered by DACA. And people. Well, these are people,
yeah,
children and now adults who came here when they were very, very young. So there has been a policy to kind of keep them safe that they can stay here. However, given what's happened, I don't know how safe this is going to be. But
yeah,
but children are anxious about this, adolescents especially, and so I wonder about kind of long-term effects on these kids. What will it be? What will it be like for the like 20, 30 years from now, having
yeah.
experienced this during childhood and adolescence?
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're totally right. This is a concerning issue, and I'm glad that you were working on this. And as I know, many professionals and mental health professionals are working on it. And not just us, right? But many, I think that nowadays the biggest part of the population is worried and is feeling
Mm.
anxious also about what's going on. Uh, Elaine, I want to ask you about your, I mean, if you look back, what accomplishments give you the most pride in your life?
I was thinking about that question. I could say, Elaine, you wrote 17 books. That's great. But I really think it's the students I've worked with over the years that hopefully I've helped them grow and develop. I mean, some have been super successful. One of them is now a dean of school social work. Another one started this large NGO in South America. Um, so some of them have, had superstar careers, and they're just beginning. But but all of them, I think, in a way, have really progressed and grown. And I'm glad I've been able to help them. And that's been my purpose in working with students over the years. So I guess I most, um, I don't know,
That's
appreciate it.
great. That's very interesting what you said, and I think it confirms a study. I think John Eitzo wrote about it that when people are asked about what was more meaningful in their lives, they don't talk so much about their accomplishments, but their relationships. And I think that you did that, right? You talked about the books, but the books it, it's not as important as your relationship with your students. This is so beautiful. Oh, thank you for
I
sharing
keep up
that.
with them. They contact me, not just to write recommendations for them to get jobs, but just to kind of tell me how they're doing. And I can use them too. Some of them who've been out for a number of years have become supervisors for me, for my internship program.
That's so nice.
It's,
What gives you hope as you look the next generation of global
uh,
psychologists and social workers?
well, students are great. I mean, they're so knowledgeable, they're so committed, they're so inventive. And I love it when someone comes up with an idea that I haven't thought about before. And
Mhm.
this happens all the time with students. They really see things in a really interesting way. And of course, not to mention the fact that they're so knowledgeable with technology. I mean, it's like their left hand, you know. So
Yeah.
I, but so we're really I've gained a lot and learned a lot from students,
Yeah.
and
Well, Elaine, what message would you like to leave for the international psychological community today?
well, keep working, keep at it. I think we're doing well. I think we have an important message to get out there. Uh,
Yeah.
I I I was thinking of something that kind of I guess it's has guided me. I want to just share this with you, as I guess one of the final things. Um, I was looking back the other day for some reason at my high school yearbook, and what it said about me was, "Give to the world the best you have, and the best will come back to you." Okay, interesting. Now, at
Wow.
that time, I might have thought, oh no, I wanted them to say I would be very successful. So, but anyway, I really think about maybe this is my mantra for life. I've really tried, and I've tried to work on I've been involved in a lot of different organizations and groups, but to, carry them forth in terms of this vision. And I've had a lot of rewards from this.
Yeah. And yeah, it's definitely a beautiful uh, way to see life and to live life, right? And you see now the results of that thought that you had there, right? Many years ago. That's
Right.
amazing. Yeah. Well, Elaine, I have some rapid reflections here. Just two questions. Uh,
Sure.
a book or a speech that shaped your worldview?
Hmm. Well, I like Martin Luther King. I have a dream that affected me.
Wow.
Um,
Right. That's great. And a place that feels like home.
Sitting with my computer. No. I like nature, believe it or not. I live in Midtown Manhattan, right? I look out at concrete buildings, nothing green in sight except for the plants that I surround myself with, inside plants. But that I think is really nice.
That's
That's
great.
I guess my happy place.
Yeah. Well,
I'll take my
well,
computer there.
well, that's great. Well, Dr. Congress, Line, thank you so much for sharing your experience and wisdom with us today. Your work truly exemplifies the spirit of international psychology and the values we uphold at ICP. So thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank,
much. And
thank,
yeah,
I just want to say, if anyone wants any more information about any of my work or, the culture grammar or anything, please contact me. My email is congress@fordham.edu.
that's great, and we will put it in our in the description of the video as well. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on the ICP podcast. Until next time.